You are dangerously insane. Look at that. Yeah, man, those are some peepers you have there.
Anthony Hopkins doesn't throw around the word masterpiece lightly. The man who gave us Hannibal Lecter spent decades studying Westerns, dissecting their moral complexity, and identifying the films that transcended the genre. What he discovered will shock you because some of cinema's most celebrated Westerns didn't make his list, while others you've probably never heard of sit at the very top. Number 10, The Wild Bunch, 1969. When Sam Peckinpah unleashed The Wild Bunch in 1969, he didn't just make a Western. He created a BLOD-soaked meditation on obsolescence that Hopkins calls essential viewing for any serious actor. The film follows an aging outlaw gang attempting one last score in 1913 Mexico. But what makes it masterful isn't the violence. It's the way Peckinpah forces you to sympathize with men who deserve no sympathy. Hopkins has cited William Holden's performance as Pike Bishop as one of the most truthful portrayals of masculine decline ever captured on film. But here's where it gets interesting. Hopkins revealed in a 1998 interview with Film Comment that he studied Holden's micro-expressions in the opening sequence for 3 months while preparing for The Remains of the Day. Those tiny moments of hesitation, the way Pike's eyes betray his failing confidence even as his voice projects authority, became the foundation for Hopkins' portrayal of Stevens the butler. The connection seems bizarre until you realize both characters are men watching their worlds disappear. Peckinpah shot the film's infamous finale over 12 days using 6 cameras running at different speeds, capturing 4,520 individual shots. The result was a 4-minute sequence that required 3 months of editing. Hopkins argues this technical innovation serves the story's emotional truth. Every slow-motion bullet, every freeze frame on a dying face, forces the audience to confront the cost of violence rather than simply consuming it as entertainment. The film originally ran 3 hours and 43 minutes, but the studio butchered it down to 2 hours and 23 minutes before release. Hopkins has called the lost footage one of cinema's greatest tragedies, comparing it to the burning of the Library of Alexandria. In 2005, he attended a screening of a partially restored version that included 17 minutes of recovered scenes, and witnesses reported he wept during the sequence where Pike visits a brothel and confronts his own impotence. That moment, Hopkins later explained, crystallizes everything Peckinpah understood about aging and irrelevance. The Mexican setting isn't accidental. Peckinpah deliberately placed his American outlaws in a foreign revolution they don't understand, making them obsolete twice over. They're too old for their own profession and too culturally ignorant to navigate the changing political landscape. Hopkins sees this. Double obsolescence as prophetic, predicting how globalization would make American exceptionalism increasingly irrelevant. The film's final image, of vultures circling the carnage, suggests nature reclaiming what civilization temporarily borrowed. Number 9, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. John Ford's final masterpiece sits at number 9, and Hopkins considers it the most sophisticated examination of myth-making ever filmed. The plot seems straightforward enough. James Stewart plays Ransom Stoddard, a senator returning to the small town of Shinbone to attend the funeral of Tom Doniphan, played by John Wayne. Through flashbacks, we learn that Stoddard's legendary status as the man who shot the vicious outlaw Liberty Valance is built on a lie. Doniphan actually cold Valance, but let Stoddard take the credit. Hopkins calls this Ford's deliberate dismantling of his own legacy. Here's what makes it brilliant. Ford spent 40 years building the mythology of the American West through films like Stagecoach and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. Then, at age 67, he created a film arguing that everything we believe about the West is carefully constructed fiction. Hopkins connected with this theme deeply. In a 2003 conversation with Martin Scorsese, he explained that the film taught him how actors are complicit in creating false narratives about heroism and valor. The famous line, "When the legend becomes fact, print the legend," isn't just about journalism. It's about how societies choose comforting lies over uncomfortable truths. Ford shot the entire film on sound stages, refusing to film a single frame on location. This wasn't a budget decision. Paramount offered him Monument Valley and unlimited resources. Ford declined, insisting the artificial set served his purpose. Hopkins argues this was genius because the claustrophobic, obviously fake environments underscore that we're watching a constructed memory, not objective reality. The black and white cinematography, unusual for 1962 when color had become standard, creates a deliberate distance from reality. Every frame announces itself as artifice. Wayne's performance devastated Hopkins when he first saw it at age 24. He watched Wayne, the ultimate symbol of American masculinity, play a man whose greatest act of love is erasing himself from history so another man can succeed. The poker game scene, where Doniphan realizes Hallie loves Stoddard, contains, according to Hopkins, the most restrained emotional devastation ever filmed. Wayne doesn't cry, doesn't shout, he just goes home and burns down the house he was building for her. That quiet self-destruction taught Hopkins that the most powerful acting happens in what you don't do. Ford's decision to bookend the film with Stoddard's return to Shinbone creates devastating irony. The senator built his career on a lie, became powerful and influential, while the man who actually called Liberty Valance died alone and forgotten. Hopkins sees this as Ford's final statement on American success, suggesting that our greatest heroes are often frauds standing on the shoulders of forgotten men. Number 8. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971. Robert Altman's anti-Western sits at number 8, and Hopkins has called it the most honest portrayal of American capitalism ever smuggled into a genre film. Warren Beatty plays John McCabe, a small-time gambler who stumbles into building a mining town brothel empire, alongside Julie Christie's opium-addicted madam. But here's the kicker. This isn't a story about triumph or even tragedy in the classical sense. It's about how commerce grinds down human connection until nothing remains but transactions. Hopkins discovered the film late, first viewing it in 1987 while recovering from alcohol addiction. He's stated that McCabe's arc, from confident entrepreneur to paranoid recluse to corpse freezing in the snow while the town ignores him to fight a church fire, perfectly captured his own spiral into self-destruction. Altman's revolutionary sound design, featuring overlapping dialogue and environmental noise that often drowns out crucial conversations, creates what Hopkins calls total immersion in a world where people talk constantly but never truly communicate. The cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond used a technique called flashing, where he exposed the film to light before shooting to desaturate colors and create a washed-out, almost documentary appearance. Every frame looks like a faded photograph, as if we're watching something that's already slipping into history. Leonard Cohen's haunting soundtrack, particularly The Stranger song and Sisters of Mercy, provides ironic counterpoint to the action. Hopkins spent 2 years trying to acquire the rights to perform Cohen's songs in a one-man stage show exploring masculinity and failure, but the project collapsed when Cohen died in 2016. The film's final sequence, where McCabe dies alone in a snowbank while Mrs. Miller loses herself in an opium dream and the town celebrates saving the church, represents for Hopkins the ultimate statement on American priorities. We value property over people, institutions over individuals, and collective myths over individual truths. The fact that McCabe dies believing he's won, having killed the corporate-hired guns sent to eliminate him, adds brutal irony. His victory is meaningless because the company will simply send more guns, and the town that owes him everything won't even notice he's gone. Hopkins has called this ending more devastating than any traditional tragic finale because it denies McCabe even the dignity of acknowledged defeat. Altman films the death in almost documentary style, the camera slowly zooming in on McCabe's face as snow covers his features and life drains away. No dramatic music, no last words, just the biological process of freezing to death. Hopkins considers this the most realistic death scene in cinema because it strips away Hollywood's romantic notions about dying and shows the ugly, lonely reality. Number 7. Unforgiven, 1992. Clint Eastwood's meditation on violence and aging claims number 7, and Hopkins considers it the perfect bookend to Eastwood's career of playing violent men. William Money, Eastwood's character, is a reformed caller drawn back into his old life by poverty and the promise of reward money. But this isn't a triumphant return to glory. It's a descent into hell that proves you can't escape your nature, no matter how desperately you try. Hopkins met Eastwood at the 1993 Academy Awards and told him that Money's final rampage through the saloon terrified him more than any horror film, because we watch a human being transform into a remorseless killing machine while fully conscious of his transformation. The film examines mythology from multiple angles. Richard Harris plays English Bob, an aging gunfighter whose biographer, W. Beauchamp, writes dime novels glorifying his exploits. When Bob gets humiliated and beaten by Gene Hackman's sadistic sheriff Little Bill Daggett, Beauchamp transfers his allegiance, seeking new heroes to mythologize. Hopkins loves this subplot because it shows how storytellers are prostitutes, selling romanticized violence to audiences craving simple narratives of good versus evil. But here's what Hopkins finds most profound. The film's moral center isn't money or any of the gunslingers. It's the prostitutes, the women whose brutal disfigurement sets the plot in motion, who represent the only genuine morality in the story. They pool their money to hire coolers, not for revenge in the abstract, but to punish men who treat women as property to be destroyed when they displease. Eastwood shot the film in Canada, not the American West, and Hopkins argues this geographical displacement is crucial. We're not watching the mythical west of Monument Valley. We're watching a cold, muddy, miserable frontier where violence doesn't bring catharsis, only more violence. The scene where Money Cole's Little Bill and his deputies contains no heroic music, no slow-motion triumph, just methodical execution accompanied by thunder and rain. Hopkins studied Eastwood's performance for months while preparing for The Silence of the Lambs, specifically the scene where Money says, "Deserves got nothing to do with it," before calling Little Bill. That cold recognition that morality is irrelevant in the face of power influenced how Hopkins played Lecter's complete amorality. The film's epilogue, revealing that Money eventually moved to San Francisco and prospered in dry goods, adds final irony. The color who claimed he'd changed, who murdered his way through big whiskey one rainy night, did change after all, but not through moral awakening, through successful commerce. Hopkins sees this as Eastwood's ultimate statement on American redemption, that we don't overcome our sins, we just profit enough to forget them. Number 6, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, 1948. John Huston's examination of greed and paranoia sits at number 6, and Hopkins calls it the most psychologically precise Western ever made. Humphrey Bogart plays Fred C. Dobbs, a down-on-his-luck American in Mexico, who joins 2 other men searching for gold in the Sierra Madre Mountains. What starts as a partnership devolves into murderous paranoia as the gold transforms reasonable men into animals. Hopkins has stated that Bogart's performance taught him how to chart a character's mental deterioration across a 2-hour narrative. Dobbs doesn't suddenly go mad. He degrades incrementally, each small surrender to suspicion paving the way for the next, until the man who started the journey no longer exists. The film's production was notoriously brutal. Huston dragged his cast and crew into actual Mexican mountains, forcing them to endure the same hardships the characters experience. Hopkins argues this wasn't sadism, but a method. Bogart's exhaustion, sunburn, and genuine discomfort bleed through every frame. You're not watching an actor pretend to suffer, you're watching suffering. Walter Huston, the director's father, plays the old prospector Howard, and his performance provides counterpoint to Dobbs's descent. Howard has seen enough gold rushes to know that the treasure itself doesn't matter. The journey reveals who you truly are, and most men don't like what they discover. Hopkins connected with this theme while filming Nixon, playing a man who achieved everything he wanted only to find that success poisoned him. The film's ending, where bandits murder Dobbs for what they think is worthless sand, not realizing the bags contain gold dust, achieves what Hopkins calls perfect irony. The treasure that destroyed Dobbs means nothing to his keelers, and the wind scatters it across the desert, while Howard and the surviving partner laugh hysterically at the cosmic joke. That laughter, Hopkins insists, isn't madness. It's the only sane response to the absurdity of human ambition. Huston adapted the film from B. Travin's novel, but he made one crucial change. In the book, Dobbs maintains some dignity even in death. Huston strips that away, having the bandits decapitate Dobbs and throw his body in the brush. Hopkins calls this decision essential because it denies the audience any comfort. Greed doesn't lead to tragic nobility. It leads to dying like an animal in the dirt. The film's Mexican setting allows Huston to explore American imperialism subtly. Dobbs and his partners enter Mexico, viewing the locals as primitive obstacles to their wealth. By the end, Mexican bandits have killed them and scattered their gold, suggesting that the exploited have the final word. Hopkins sees this as Huston's commentary on how American exceptionalism inevitably fails when confronted with the reality that other cultures don't accept our myths about ourselves. Number 5. Shane, 1953. George Stevens' mythic Western sites at number 5, and Hopkins considers it the most perfectly constructed film in the genre. Alan Ladd plays Shane, a mysterious gunfighter trying to escape his violent past by working as a farmhand for a homesteader family. When cattlemen threaten the farmers, Shane must choose between his desire for peace and his responsibility to protect the innocent. Hopkins calls Shane the archetypal Christ figure in Western clothing, a man who sacrifices his chance at redemption to save others. The film's influence on Hopkins' career is profound. The final scene where Shane rides away, wounded and possibly dying, while young Joey screams, "Shane, come back," taught Hopkins that the most powerful endings leave questions unanswered. We never know if Shane survives, never learn his real name or history. He remains a mystery incarnate, which is precisely why he's unforgettable. Stevens shot the film in the Grand Tetons, and the mountain vistas aren't just beautiful, they dwarf the human conflicts, suggesting that these life and death struggles are insignificant against geological time. Hopkins loves this cosmic perspective. The film argues that individual heroism matters desperately to the individuals involved, but the mountains don't care who wins the range war. Time will erase all evidence of these struggles. The relationship between Shane and Joey, played by Brandon DeWilde, provides the emotional core. Shane sees in Joey the innocent he himself once was, before violence consumed his soul. Joey sees in Shane everything heroic and noble that his hard-working but unheroic father cannot provide. Hopkins argues that Shane's decision to coal the villain Jack Wilson, despite knowing it will corrupt his soul further, represents genuine sacrifice. He's not saving his own life, or even the settlers' lives alone. He's saving Joey's innocence by preventing the boy from witnessing his father's murder. The saloon showdown between Shane and Wilson, played by Jack Palance, is for Hopkins the most perfectly choreographed gunfight in cinema. No quick cuts, no shaky cam, just two men facing death with absolute clarity. When Shane draws and fires in one fluid motion, killing Wilson and the corrupt cattleman Riker, he doesn't gloat or celebrate. He just reloads and walks out, his face showing complete awareness that he's destroyed any chance at the peaceful life he wanted. Stevens uses color symbolically throughout, dressing Shane in buckskin that stands out against the settlers' dark farming clothes and the cattlemen's black outfits. Shane exists between worlds, belonging fully to neither, and his costume announces this liminal status. Hopkins has cited this visual storytelling as inspiration for how he uses physical appearance to convey character psychology. The film's final moments, with Shane riding into the mountains while Joey's cries echo across the valley, create what Hopkins calls the perfect tragic ending. We want Shane to return, to be healed, to find peace, but we know he won't, because men like Shane can never escape their nature. Number 4. The Searchers, 1956. John Ford's obsessive masterpiece claims number 4, and Hopkins calls it the most disturbing exploration of racism and obsession ever disguised as an adventure film. John Wayne plays Ethan Edwards, a Confederate veteran who spends years searching for his niece Debbie, kidnapped by Comanches during a raid that culled most of his family. But here's what makes the film brilliant. Ethan isn't searching to save Debbie. He's searching to call her because she's lived with Comanches too long and become, in his mind, irredeemably contaminated. Hopkins discovered The Searchers at age 19 and immediately recognized it as a film about the monster inside civilized men. Ethan's racism isn't incidental to his character. It's the defining feature, and Ford never asks us to forgive or understand it. We simply watch it consume him over 7 years of searching. The film's visual compositions influenced Hopkins' understanding of how images convey meaning. Ford frames Ethan in doorways obsessively, always on thresholds, never fully inside domestic spaces. He's a man who cannot exist within civilization, too violent and damaged to ever truly come home. The famous final shot, where Ethan stands in the doorway after returning Debbie to her surviving family, then turns and walks back into the desert while the door closes, captures for Hopkins the tragedy of men who save civilization but can never join it. Wayne's performance shocked Hopkins because Wayne, the ultimate American hero, plays an unrepentant racist whose obsession nearly leads him to martyr his own niece. In the crucial moment when Ethan finally catches Debbie and holds her aloft to kill her, something shifts. Instead of murdering her, he says, "Let's go home, Debbie," and carries her to safety. Hopkins has spent decades analyzing that moment, trying to understand what stops Ethan from committing the meurder he's planned for years. His conclusion is that Ford deliberately leaves it ambiguous. Maybe Ethan sees his dead mother in Debbie's face, triggering a memory that overwhelms hatred. Maybe he simply can't murder a woman he watched grow up. Or maybe, Hopkins suggests, Ethan realizes that culling Debbie won't erase his own contamination, his own years spent behaving like the savages he claims to hate. The film's treatment of Native Americans is deeply problematic by modern standards, but Hopkins argues we must engage with that problematic content rather than dismissing the film. Ford shows us a racist protagonist and never apologizes for him, forcing us to confront how heroism and bigotry coexist in American mythology. Monument Valley's stunning landscapes provide an ironic backdrop to Ethan's ugly obsession. The natural beauty suggests a world of possibilities, while Ethan's narrowing focus reduces everything to his need for racial purity and revenge. Hopkins sees this contradiction as Ford's critique of how Americans use sublime landscape to justify brutal conquest. Number 3. Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968. Sergio Leone's operatic masterpiece sits at number 3, and Hopkins calls it the purest distillation of Western mythology into visual poetry. The film opens with one of cinema's most audacious sequences: 3 gunmen waiting at a train station for 10 minutes of screen time, with almost no dialogue, just environmental sounds, creaking windmills, buzzing flies, and dripping water, building unbearable tension. Hopkins has stated that watching that opening at age 30 convinced him that patience in performance trumps activity every time. The plot involves a mysterious harmonica, playing gunman, seeking revenge against a ruthless railroad baron, while a former prostitute inherits valuable land that holds the key to the railroad's expansion. But plot is almost irrelevant in Leone's hands. The film is a symphony of faces, landscapes, and Ennio Morricone's transcendent score. Hopkins studied Leone's use of extreme close-ups, where a character's eyes filled the entire screen, to understand how small facial movements communicate entire emotional landscapes. When he played Hannibal Lecter, those extreme close-ups of his face during the census taker speech directly reference Leone's visual grammar. Henry Fonda's casting as Frank, the villain, was revolutionary. Fonda had played heroic characters for decades, so seeing him murder a child in cold blood in the film's first 15 minutes subverted audience expectations brutally. Hopkins loves this because it proves actors carry accumulated cultural meaning that can be weaponized. When Fonda's blue eyes, famous for projecting nobility and decency, show absolute absence of conscience, it's more disturbing than any unknown actor could achieve. The film runs 2 hours and 45 minutes, and every minute serves Leone's meditation on how the West represents America's transition from mythology to capitalism. The railroad replacing the individual gunfighter mirrors how industrial organization replaced individual frontier spirit. Jill, played by Claudia Cardinale, is the only character who understands this transformation. While men call each other over old grudges, she builds the town that will make gunslingers obsolete. Hopkins argues that Jill is Leone's true protagonist, the only character looking forward rather than backward. The final duel between Harmonica and Frank plays out in flashback interrupted slow motion, revealing that Frank killed Harmonica's brother years ago in a uniquely cruel manner, forcing the brother to support Harmonica on his shoulders with a noose around his neck until his strength gave out. Hopkins calls this revelation devastating because we realize the entire plot has been driven by one man's patient, methodical revenge for a crime we never knew about. Leone's decision to shoot in Spain and Utah rather than Italy's usual Western locations gives the film a mythic quality. The landscapes are real, but feel dreamlike, as if we're watching events unfold in the collective unconscious rather than physical geography. Hopkins believes this unreality is intentional, suggesting that the West exists primarily as a psychological space where Americans work through national traumas and contradictions. Number 2, the Oxbow Incident, 1943. William Wellman's savage indictment of mob justice claims number 2, and Hopkins considers it the most morally uncompromising American film ever made. The plot is deceptively simple. A posse of townsmen, inflamed by rumors of cattle rustling and murder, hunt down 3 strangers and lynch them, despite insufficient evidence. After the hangings, the posse discovers the men were innocent. The actual victim isn't even dead, and the real rustlers are in custody. Hopkins calls this film essential viewing for understanding how ordinary people commit atrocities. No character in the Oxbow incident is purely evil. They're tired, frustrated men who convince themselves that quick justice serves the greater good. The film's power comes from forcing the audience to recognize themselves in the lynch mob. When Henry Fonda's character, Gil Carter, tries to stop the hanging, his objections are procedural, not moral. He wants to wait for proper law, but he never questions whether the men might be innocent. Only Major Tetley, played by Frank Conroy, advocates strongly for immediate execution, and even he frames it as civic duty rather than bloodlust. Hopkins studied Dana Andrews' performance as Donald Martin, one of the lynched men, while preparing for multiple roles involving condemned men. Andrews plays Martin without hysterics or melodrama. He's frightened but dignified, pleading for his life while maintaining that he's innocent. The posse doesn't disbelieve him. They just don't care enough to wait for confirmation. That apathy horrifies Hopkins more than active evil. After the hanging, one posse member reads Martin's farewell letter to his wife, and the camera holds on the listeners' faces as they realize what they've done. Hopkins calls this sequence the most effective use of shame in cinema. We watch men confront their capacity for murder, and several break down, but their tears don't resurrect the dead. The film ends without resolution or catharsis. The posse returns to town. Gil promises to deliver Martin's letter and care for his widow, and life continues. Hopkins argues this refusal to provide moral comfort is what elevates the film to masterpiece status. There's no redemption arc, no justice served, just the knowledge that 3 innocent men died because a group of tired, angry people chose convenience over conscience. The studio tried to add a hopeful ending where the real rustlers are caught and punished, but Wellman refused. The point isn't that justice eventually prevails. The point is that injustice leaves permanent scars that no subsequent correction can heal. Wellman shot the film in just 3 weeks on a tiny budget, using studio sets rather than location filming. Hopkins sees this economy as strength. The artificial environments create a theatrical quality that emphasizes the story's moral, parable nature. We're not watching realistic Western adventures. We're watching a morality play about how societies abandon principles under pressure. The film was a commercial failure upon release, audiences rejecting its bleakness during World War II. But Hopkins argues that war context makes the film more relevant, not less, showing how ordinary Americans could commit atrocities if they convinced themselves it served the greater good. Number 1. The Man from Laramie, 1955. Anthony Mann's psychological Western takes the top spot, and Hopkins calls it the most perfectly realized synthesis of genre and character study ever achieved. James Stewart plays Will Lockhart, a former cavalry captain, who arrives in a New Mexico town, seeking the man who sold rifles to Apaches, leading to a massacre where his brother died. But this isn't a simple revenge story. Mann and Stewart create a descent into obsession that rivals anything in film noir. Hopkins first saw The Man from Laramie in 1962 and claims it changed his understanding of what acting could achieve. Stewart had spent the 1940s playing affable everymen in Frank Capra films. In the 1950s, working with Mann, he revealed darkness, rage, and capacity for violence that shocked audiences expecting George Bailey or Jefferson Smith. Lockhart's journey becomes increasingly brutal. The local cattle baron's psychotic son, played by Alex Nicole, shoots Lockhart's mules, then shoots Lockhart through the hand at point-blank range in a scene so vicious that censors tried to cut it. Hopkins studies that hand-shooting sequence annually, fascinated by Stewart's performance. Lockhart doesn't scream or collapse. He stands there, absorbing the pain, eyes burning with controlled fury that promises future retribution. That control, Hopkins argues, is what separates Mann's Westerns from traditional revenge narratives. Lockhart never loses himself to rage. Every violent act is calculated, purposeful, which makes it more disturbing than hot-blooded retaliation. The film's psychological complexity comes from the relationship between Lockhart and the cattle baron Alec Wagaman, played by Donald Crisp. Wagaman is going blind, his physical deterioration mirroring his loss of control over his son and ranch. He recognizes in Lockhart the son he wishes he had, creating a surrogate father-son dynamic that complicates the revenge plot. Hopkins loves that man refuses to simplify these relationships. Wagaman is simultaneously a tragic figure losing everything he built, and a tyrant whose neglect created the monster his son became. When the truth about the rifle sales emerges, implicating Wagaman's foreman rather than his son, the revelation doesn't provide catharsis. The son is still a psychotic caller. The father is still dying. Lockhart's brother is still dead. The rifles still massacred soldiers. Revenge doesn't heal anything. It just redistributes pain. Hopkins has called the final confrontation between Lockhart and the foreman the most emotionally complex shootout in cinema. Lockhart wins, culling the man responsible for his brother's death, but Stewart's face shows no triumph. Just exhaustion and the knowledge that this victory is meaningless. His brother remains dead, and nothing Lockhart does can change that fundamental truth. Man films the climax in blinding sunlight, the white alkali desert creating almost abstract compositions, where human figures become dark shapes against overwhelming brightness. Hopkins sees this visual strategy as expressing how revenge reduces complex human beings to simple silhouettes, stripping away nuance until only violence remains. The film's title refers to Lockhart's hometown, a place he can never return to because his quest has transformed him into something his home wouldn't recognize. Hopkins considers this the ultimate statement on how revenge destroys the Avenger more thoroughly than the target. So there you have it. 10 westerns that Anthony Hopkins considers masterpieces, each one revealing something profound about violence, morality, and the myths we tell ourselves about heroism. These films aren't just entertainment, they're examinations of the American soul, and they demand to be studied, not just watched.